Welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday YouTube channel. I am your host, Ryan Hartley. This channel is for heart-centered leaders just like you. I hope our time spent together helps you leave a heartprint where those around you are left better than yesterday. These interview sessions are sponsored by our great friends at Elevate Online Marketing. On episode 207, I'm joined by Amilya Antonetti. Amilya is one of the most sought-after human behaviour and strategic advisor experts in the world. She has appeared as a regular business and behaviour expert on the Oprah Winfrey Show, the Steve Harvey Show, and Dr. Phil. She has built or advised over $2 billion in sales for companies and high-profile clients such as Steve Harvey and Mike Tyson. Amilya's vision for a healthier relationship between people and companies has earned her global respect and numerous awards, including the Women's Economic Forum Woman of the Decade 2019 award. Today, Amilya is the CEO and creator of Designing Genius. Designing Genius is a growing organization of successful experts from a variety of backgrounds who are passionate about helping people and organizations discover their genius. The magic of discovering genius is that it is based on human behavior and it works immediately. There's no motivational fluff, no one-size-fits-all, just practical tools that work immediately to get the desired results. Head to designinggenius.com for more information. But here we go, episode 207 with Amilya Antonetti. Amilya, welcome to Always Better Than Yesterday podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I can't wait for this conversation. And I guess I'm going to start with the obvious question, which is, what is genius and how did you find yours?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think that genius is an inner compass. It's something that we're born with. And I think it's also something that we actually fight for a lot of behavioral reasons. And I think that I found my genius in my darkest of dark. It was my key out. And I didn't realize at the time what that even was. And so I lived a life for a long time of what I thought I had to do. Versus when I finally got to like depths of hell, I was like, well, how do I get out of here? And like an inner instinct kicked over for me. Yeah. And I realized that that was my inner genius. That was my calling the whole time.
Tell us a little bit about that context. Tell us about the backstory.
I think like I have had like, this is always fall down, get up, fall down, get up, fall down, get up. But there was always like a weird sixth sense in me that even though I was in horrific circumstances, I had like an inner knowing that this too shall pass. And there's really no reason for that. I had a really, really traumatic childhood. I made some really big, bold moves. I mean, now when I look back, I'm like, what? Are you out of your mind? What were you thinking? So I was emancipated at 15 years old, and was so confident. Like, I was like, of course I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to raise my brothers. I had such fierceness of knowing. And I look back at now going, you had nothing to go on. You had nothing to go on. What do you mean? You're 15. You're going to start raising your brother with what? Yeah. Right. But that was my mindset. My mindset was like this inner drive that said, well, if my parents are going to be screwed up, I'll do it at 15, and if they're, I'm going to raise them. Right. And just,
I guess at what point did you realize that that's leadership?
Oh, not years. I mean, no, I didn't. Same thing too with like the word, people like, oh, when did you know you're an entrepreneur? I'm like, you do? No, I still can't spell it without tripping over the letter. I'm like, there was no such thing when I started about being an entrepreneur. People forget that when I started in business, there weren't the women that you see today. There was no Oprah. There was no Martha Stewart. There really wasn't. There was Whoopi Goldberg, and I'm not funny. So it was there. And there was Barbara Walters, and I didn't want to interview people. There was no other women. That was it. And so when I started in being just so naive, right? Just so naive when I started my first couple of businesses, I thought that they were going to give me a parade. I thought they were going to go, way to go. You found, a problem that you can solve in the marketplace. I didn't realize that I stepped in the big boy's backyard and they didn't want me there. bringing green mainstream. There was no parade. They wanted me to go away. And I was like, what? I was like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean? You don't open the door and welcome? That's not what happened. And because I was so naive, and I say, well, that was really my greatest gift, because if I would have known what was going to happen to me, I never would have started. Wouldn't have done it. Wouldn't have done it. And this kind of fall down, get up, fall down, get up. I got to a part of my life where I really started analyzing, like, who am I? Why am I here? What am I made of? Where does this energy come from? Where is it of service to others? And I started to go, oh, wow, I'm actually none of the things that people told me I was. I was none of those things. And I was like, wow. And somebody said, well, this is what, being an authentic leader is. And I'm like, I'm not a leader. What do you mean a leader? I'm not a leader. And they're like, Amilya, you run 53,000 employees. You aren't a leader. I'm like, oh no, I'm not a leader. I'm a team player, but I'm not a leader. Right. Cause I really pushed back on a lot of the terminologies that I had a dysfunctional association with those words. Leadership was never kind to me. So I didn't want to be a leader because I associated that with suffering. Yeah, see, totally messed up.
No, it's fantastic. Yeah, but I've come to realize that the people, and particularly when we're in the world of really trying to make a difference through people, with people, that actually sometimes that comes through pain. One of the things I've read in the Good Book last year in a different translation, it says that there's this well-known scripture that talks about the thorn in the flesh, and people know that in your weakness you are made strong. But this translation I read, it says, in your weakness you will find God's full expression.
Ooh.
And like that
Ooh,
like,
that's good.
And it gets me every time, because I think in that pain, in that thorn in our flesh, in the things that we wish might never have happened, we allow God's full expression to come through us in the work that we do. And I call that heart work. I call that work that we're meant to do in terms of the things that light us up, the things that really, bring out the best in us, the gifts, the skills, the talents. But it's not really for us, it's for the people in the world who need it. And I guess, what were some of the things in your early days? A bit of a spoiler alert, you've just said you've led 53,000 human beings, and I can't not dive into that, but I want to know, how did you get to even become that person that's even leading 53,000 employees?
And I keep going back to, there's a part of me that is very naive. Yeah. There's a part of me that's very undeveloped because I didn't have a childhood. I was running for my life from 6 years old. And at 8 years old, I was raising my brothers. And at 15, I was legally emancipated. Wow. I don't know if you have kids.
Yeah, but two.
I have them. And I look at them going, oh, not a chance in hell. You wouldn't last a day. You wouldn't last a day out there, right? And so I didn't have some of those fundamental experiences of childhood and curiosity, let alone safety and security and stuff like that. And so there's parts of me that are still very, very childlike. Yeah. And what I mean by that is I did not realize what I was doing. And I mean that in the most of sincerity, right? My drive was, at every one of my companies have been very passion driven to solve a big problem that the world said, well, you'll never do that. And I'm like, you do realize I'm not supposed to be here, right? You do realize that I should have been dead 10 times. So you telling me I can't do something, I literally crack up. I'm like, I know I'm on the right path when you tell me I can't do something. I'm like, oh, that's my cue to keep going that way. And so the need, right? So for one of the companies that I'm known for is bringing green mainstream. Green was a color when I started. And I was like, well, what if we could create harmony between humans and earth in a way that would be non-toxic? And people were like, you're crazy. And I'm like, okay, but what if, right? And so I started because my son was so sick. I was losing my son. My son was in and out of hospitals. They're like, you're not going to make it. He's not going to make it. Just, literally had a doctor say to me, well, you could just do it again. I'm like, what? What is wrong with you? Like, why would you say that to a mother? Like, I didn't buy him at Walmart. I mean, this is my child you're talking about. They're like, you're young, you're successful, just make another child. And I'm like, oh, you're gross. Get away from me. Wow. Right. Which triggers in me a fierceness that you don't want to recognize with at all. Right. If I've locked my brain into something, you've lost. I'll just tell you right now. And that used to be one of the things, in the business community, again, because there wasn't really a lot of women, and some amazing men mentored me and opened doors for me and just really, really befriended me to try to learn as I went. But they basically would say, if you sit across the table from her, you've lost. Don't sit down. Don't sit down. And that fierceness was never about me. That's where it was misunderstood. Right. And so the fierceness came from the team who believed in what we were building. So it was like, I can't let them down. Like, I can't go back and go, oh, I didn't get the purchase order. What? I was like, oh, I'm not leaving here. I am not, I'll follow you home. I am not leaving here to go back to my team and tell you that I didn't win, or I didn't get the pitch, or whatever it was that I was working on. But the fierceness came from them, not me. I'm an introvert. I wouldn't leave my house. And so that's what was misunderstood in the beginning of my career, was I was articulated as like this, barracuda, super smart strategist. And I'm like, who are you talking about? Like, I was just doing what I thought the next right thing was. Yeah. There was no strategy. There wasn't anything. It was this thinking I needed to create an environment for my team where they felt seen, heard, and recognized. So when I built the school in my company, people are like, you can't build a school in your company. I'm like, who says so? Who says so? I'm going to homeschool right here. They go, you can't homeschool in a company. I'm like, watch me. Right. And so I didn't want my team to commute to their children. I was like, that's awful. That's awful. Why would I? No, I'm not doing that. So we did that. Then way before there was shared work or the hybrid worker, we had no titles. We had no job titles. We had no times. There was no like, be here at 9. I was like, get your work done. I don't care. Get your work done. And people are like, listen, can I work from, 11 at night to 6 in the morning? I'm like, I don't care. As long as it's done, I don't care. And so we started creating systems and a way of operating that was based on humans, right? Not necessarily just the value drivers of the business. I was concerned about what drove value for them as humans. And then as more companies grew, they were like, well, that's because you're a female CEO. And I'm like, what? What does that have to do with me being female? I'm like, isn't that me about being caring and nurturing for my team who has sacrificed their livelihood to be here? Like, I'm in an impossible game as an entrepreneur. I'm against the odds. I'm asking you to bet against the odds, and I don't understand what drives value for you. That's cruel. And so me getting to know my team as a behaviorist and for people problems, like leaning into that space, that was all self-serving, because I was trying to figure out, how do I serve them in a way that has meaning for them, not for me? And so some of the things that I get credited for, I step back going, I'm maybe the person that you see, but it's them. It's all about them. It's always been about them. And even when we huddle up about like, what's the next initiative that we want to go after, half the time it's not me that says this is the next initiative. Somebody on the team goes, you know what I think we should do? And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. How do we do that? And they're like, oh, we're going to get pushback. I'm like, oh, that just means we're doing the right thing. Right. I don't have some of the knee-jerk reactions that other people do going into the, the depths of the abyss. And the reason is because I was born in the depths of abyss. So the fact that I'm alive, I've already won. I won. I made it out. I'm alive. Everything else is just a game.
Hey, my friends, thank you for being with us so far. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I just wanted to take a quick moment to let you know about our signature Heartprint coaching. Our Heartprint coaching is for you if you're ready to go all in on becoming a heart-centered leader. ready to go all in on doing more of what you love, ready to see what you are capable of with support, guidance, and accountability. You're ready to go on a rapid, transformational journey that will change your life and others in as little as 3 months. Are you ready to show up with courage and share your gift with the world? Ready to start making an income and more impact by doing what you love? Ready to start leaving your legacy where those around you are left better than yesterday? In our Heartprint signature coaching, in our time together, I'll help you lead from your heart set. I'll help you develop other people and your team. I'll help you bring your heart work to the world. I'll help you start leaving a legacy and capturing examples of your impact. I will help you be someone you love, to do more of what you love, and to serve people that you love. It's an amazing opportunity for someone who's ready to go all in and be a heart-centered leader. I'll throw in loads of other bonuses, including your life languages profile, access to our Master Heart and Mind membership, and even some Always Better Than Yesterday merchandise. Head to abty.co.uk/coaching to find out more, and I look forward to connecting with you very soon. That's abty.co.uk/coaching. Here we go. Back to the interview. When I was at the police, so I did 12 years in the UK police service, variety of civilian roles, and one of the things that used to be said about me is that, you know, I had my heart on my sleeve, and that was never a, hey, he wears his heart on his sleeve. It was like he's a icky, like, oh, how do we deal with emotions? Yeah. And I was led to believe that was my weakness. And it's not until I read a wonderful book by our friend in common, Bob Berg, you know, the Go Leader.
Bob, he wrote the foreword of my book. I love Bob.
He did, and I
love Bob. I love him so much. Yeah. He's taught me so much.
Yeah, and reading that book as a young lad in my mid-20s, thinking that I could lead in a way that was true to me and different to what I was seeing, but not having that kind of in my corner, reading that was like oxygen. And, you know, I guess for me, what that helped me do is understand that there is a complete correlation between greatest strength, greatest weakness, that they are two sides of the same coin. And I guess, you know, maybe for you and maybe for other people, realizing that, you know, that naivety or whatever that might be, on the flip side of that is some incredible strength. And I guess, when did you start to be conscious of your driving force and your power?
This is what I don't see it.
Sure.
Okay. So people will say to me, oh my gosh, you're so intense. I'm like, really? Like, I'm the most loving, nurturing, caring, like, I love to cheer for other people. And so keep hearing that over again. I'm intense. I'm intense. I'm intense. I'm inside the bubble, so I don't see the intensity. And so I've had to learn over time that my intensity could be a trigger for other people, right? And so for me, the opposite of intensity is what's my trigger, right? That's my trigger. Like, I literally would go, why are we all being so quiet? What are we waiting on? Like, what's happening? Yeah, exactly. You know, and so I had to learn, like what you said, your greatest strength is your greatest weekend, and how they lock together. You know, I spent a lot of time as a behaviorist explaining to some people what shadow and light is. Yeah. And that the real work is done in your shadow. Yeah. Growth is in your shadow. You'll never grow from your light. That's the area where you excel. The things that you know and believe is the light side, right? If you talk about the infinity loop, right? Giving and receiving, infinity loop, right? The shadow and the light. People keep trying to do personal development in the light. Right. And I laugh. I laugh. I'm like,
and the self-love.
Yeah, that'll never work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the depths of the darkness that you actually see your own reflection. You see your reflection in the dark. Yes. And in that shadow is your genius. It's the inner thing that you don't even pay attention to that creeps out in the most difficulties of life, right? And so for me, when I look back, right? All of those situations that I would wish on nobody.
Mhm.
And I was like, so what was happening? Right? Because we say that all the time. What you think is happening is not what's ever happening.
Mhm.
And so for me, in those things where some people would have just rolled over in the fetal position and they would have been like, this is it.
Mm.
I was like, oh, not a chance in hell.
Yeah.
Right. And there's stories, you know, that my grandparents used to tell. I mean, this is how we're going to the land of the biz here. So my grandparents used to tell these stories about how I would be beaten.
Mm.
And I would turn around to my father and go, is that all you got? Is that it?
Whoa.
Feel like a man? That's it? That's all you got?
Whoa,
Where
the
they'd be
fight in
like,
this one
don't
is strong.
antagonize him. Right. That was me though. That was me.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't cry. My brothers would cry.
Sure.
My father would just show up and they'd be like, ah! And so he would stop. And I'd be like, really? That's it? You're a man? That's what you got? Really? No tears here. No. And he would just wail on me. And I would be stone cold, because I wasn't going to give in. And so that skill of not being forced into submission, of belief, it's not my physicality. It was my mental fortitude.
Yeah.
You're not going to break me,
Mm-hmm.
because I will fight for my team.
Mm.
But if I don't have something that I'm defending or fighting for, I'll roll over.
That's
I'll roll
interesting.
over.
One of the most haunting things I've ever read was the final page of Dr. Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages. And it says, for all the love we do not receive as children, we'll go out into the world seeking that as adults. I thought, oh, shit. Like the amount of adults, particularly men in business, that are using work to receive the love with which they did not get as children. It is, I guess, it horrifies me. And I was reading your blog earlier, and you talk about, the 10 things that you need to know to live a life by design. And one of the points that you make is what you don't heal hurts people.
Will, it's your weapon.
Absolutely. And I think this is such a relevant conversation for all leaders, right? You have to heal, otherwise your leadership will suffer. You will hurt people. And yet I don't think there's an acceptance or a willingness to do this work in leadership because it's not seen as one of the same. How does that bear any relevance? Keep home at home, keep work at work. But we bring all of ourselves. If we're trying to bring all of ourselves to being human as leaders, then we have to recognize that we bring all of us with it. I can see you smiling. What do you think about what I've just said?
So I when people say that, home is home, is work is work. And I'm like, really? How do you go in two directions at the same time? Demonstrate that for me.
Yeah.
How are you going in two directions at the same time? This is people who go, oh, well, I'm a jerk in my business life, but I'm a puppy dog at home. And I'm like, you do know the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Because time is man-made. That's man-made for us to understand the concept. Energy, right? It's a way for us to understand concepts, right? We break them down so that we can understand them, but we think that then becomes real. Well, it's not real. It's real so we can understand it. And so in that is where people get lost in trying to utilize metaphors or story to relate to what we're learning. They take the story as is. I'm like, oh, you're missing. The story is a metaphor, right? Like that is what it's representing. And so that's where people get lost, because you got to remember 50% of the world, right, is of doing, literal. And 50% of the world is of being. And both sides are required for us to function as humans. Not one is better or worse. It is what happens in your primary state, right? And so I try to give the analogy that when you're witness crisis, right? So your family dog gets hit by a car. Half the population go, oh my God, call 911, get a list, see if the dog's breathing, get me a, They go into doing. And then that night they will grieve and cry and whatever. The other half of the world will be like, oh my God, that's the family pet. What am I going to tell the kids? Oh my gosh, is the dog suffering? They go into being. Now, one isn't right or wrong. It's your root behavior. And then that root is then surrounded by what the world told you. So there's a lot of people that are high doers. The doer is the mask. It's the protect. That's not who they are. They're really beers who have put in all this stuff. And so when I work with people, a lot of times they have a tough time because they're like, I'm a doer. I'm like, really? Are you looking at all of this ripple effect, all of the shadowness that comes off of your doing? If you were truly a doer, it wouldn't be there. Like for me, I'm way over action oriented, right? Over the top executor. I'm an execute. You would literally have to stop and go, Amelia, how do you feel? And I'm like, what? They go, well, how do you feel? Feel about what? Like I have to lean in to go, oh, my feelings are actually hurt. Oh, wow. Like I'm now showing up defensive because you hurt me, but I'll skip right over the fact that you hurt me and keep doing. Same thing with being, right? Being, similar situation, right? If you overstimulate a person of being with all the things that they have to do, well, they'll do nothing. Not because they can't, because you just threw the entire kitchen sink at them, right? And it's not, you can't, being people need to be able to, because they are. And so they get into a situation and they're not only aware of what's happening, but what's happening in the happening. And we've stomped that out of the importance of life. We need our beings. We need our creators. I need them on my team. I need them around me so I don't do damage. I got people on my team trying to go, oh, Amelia, you need to slow your roll. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, you're going too fast. I'm like, what do you mean going too fast? They're like, you're hurting people. I'm like, hurting people? What do you mean I'm hurting people? They're like, you're dragging them behind you. Slow down. I'm like, oh, but that's not me learning a skill. It's me clocking into an infinity loop of trust that when my partners say to me, ease back, I ease back. I don't go, well, why? Well, what's the evidence? I'm like, oh, okay, ease back. What's happening? What's going on? What's happening? And they're like, oh, this is, abandonment, or this is triggered, or that's triggered, and I'm like, okay. And then I can lean in with my behavioral tools. But the awareness comes from them first, not me, them.
Yeah, I mean, you've been on Variety, talked about Oprah earlier, Steve Harvey, human behaviorist, strategic advisor to some very, very influential and high platform people. And I guess last year I was reading Will Smith's book. And he's an interesting topic, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because one of the things I really kind of paid attention to was that his father, in his abuse, what Will got very, very attuned to, almost like Bob would say, listening and feeling with the back of your neck. He got very, very good at reading his father's mood. And I guess that's where he was able to develop his comedy. He would use his humor to get his father in a good mood so he wouldn't get a whooping. And I guess, is that, maybe your background, particularly your interest in people, maybe the dysfunctional side of people, is that what kind of got you down the human behavior route?
I mean, I think it has to. I think out of great suffering comes your greatest strength. And I really have always been somebody to go, there's another way. I don't believe, and it's hard to convince me otherwise, that the people in my life who hurt me greatly intended it. I don't believe they intended it. I believe that they were doing it the best that they can. And in their limited skills created layers and layers and layers of suffering. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But as a behaviorist, as I go into so many situations, what I find is that the intention is rarely there, but that doesn't abdicate the responsibility that you are creating suffering. And the thing that is the hardest for me to bear witness to is people when they create their own suffering. And that's the lack of life skills, behavioral tools, identifiers, modification, all this stuff that I put out there, because we don't want to suffer. Nobody wakes up and goes, well, I'd like to suffer today, but it's happening. And it's happening more and more as we disconnect. And I think that that's the biggest misnomer that has happened with the digital revolution, the rise of social media and technology and stuff like that, which again, there's so much good that came out of that.
Yep.
But at the same time, what it created was disconnect, right? It's people think it's a tool to connect. It's actually a tool to disconnect. And now we live in these little circles where we're actually meant to be part of an infinity loop, giving and receiving through the bound of trust. And we live in silos. And then when you take a look at some of the reports that came out in 2022, right? 91% of people feel alone, not seen, not heard, not recognized. 70% of employees basically said, my bosses don't even care. And so we have disassociated so much. We think we're islands. And for young people, they don't even know how to connect because they have a relationship now with technology. And there's been so much white paper. So a young person connecting with technology lights up the same part of the brain as if the human was actually there. But you have to, and when I work with parents, I go, listen, if you remember when you were in school and nobody wanted to sit next to you at the lunch table, you came home devastated that they didn't want to sit with you. That happens thousands of times per second with our young people. They didn't like, they didn't share, they didn't watch. They like rejection. You're not good enough, abandonment, you're alone. The messaging is compulsive. And when you see the anxiety that happens when you remove them from the device, this is, I love when parents do that. Oh, I'm just going to take the devices away. I'm like, really? Now you're creating trauma. So we just don't understand what's really going on, and we're missing tools to be able to move at somebody's pace based on whatever the topic is. And so that's so much around the work that we're doing, is helping people to understand what is really going on, what's going on for you, what's going on for them, what's on whose side, how do we maneuver through it, how do we create connection, how do we belong, and where does belonging, all these unanswered questions that all derive, whether we like it or not, back to the families, back to the communities, and into our workplace. Because the greatest community we have is where we work. It's where we work.
Yeah, 40 hours a week, if
if not more.
Exactly. This might be a controversial thought. It's something I was thinking about recently, and something bugs me a little bit around the posts around depression. Because, people will post up, this is what depression can look like. And it'd be smiling faces. And I'm like, we have got to a point where the both use of antidepressants and social media is allowing people to portray something on the outside that is not present on the inside. I think the presence of depression, and I think the presence of those emotions correlated with an outward expression of that genuine emotion, gives every human being around them the verbal cues to lean in and help that person. We're not supposed to be masking it with tablets and smiling. I think the correlation between, and maybe not clinical depression, but the feeling of being depressed. I think that when felt and manifest in our presence allows someone to lean in and go, you okay? And we get that by that, like you say, the infinity loop in person. I feel your presence and I feel something's not right. I'm going to lean in and I'm going to help you. Now, how do we do that? Like, I want to help you. I don't want people to feel disconnected. I don't want people to feel sad and upset and depressed. But how am I supposed to know? Because you're removing all of our social cues that we've relied upon for thousands of years to live and love and serve each other as a community.
Well, we've changed everything about community, though. See, the word community is misunderstood, right? The word of depression is misunderstood, right? We're the loneliest society ever in existence. We are more lonely as a people, as a species, than we ever have been before. And part of that is, where did you learn to connect and belong? We dismantled the family unit. We've messed that up. Right? The community used to be around church, and there was a grocery store, and there was a, place to play. And we used to be in the streets. We had all these touch points of community, right? For me, we go be out on the piazza, right? We were out on the piazza every night. That's what we did, because they didn't want us in the house. We'd be out there playing. Well, we removed all those things. We're helicopter parents, so nobody's allowed to play. And if you want to play, you have to play date. So now it's like a whole ordeal. And if you're going to do that, now it becomes more complicated because there's usually a parent at the home at most. And so all of these layers of isolation, difficulty, suffering, we've complicated things to such a degree that we feel overwhelmed and isolated. Yeah, we all are lonely, but lonely manifests now so differently on the outside package because we're told we should look and be a certain way, right? So even like what you were saying before, saying, well, as a human, you were somebody who was in touch with your feelings, and then you got labeled as wearing your heart on your sleeve, as if that was even a correct articulation of who you are. Like that's even hard, like that. Like I go, what does that even mean? Right? That it means something different to everybody who hears that box. Same thing for me. I had the opposite. People are like, she's emotionless. She's a barracuda. She has no feelings. And I'm like, yeah, no, just because I cry at home doesn't mean I don't have feelings. Right. And so we create stories for us to excuse our behavior on others. We're literally creating the story so that I go, oh, well, she's tough. She doesn't matter. You can just plow all over her and be rude because she can handle it. Really? Don't you have some responsibility on how you show up with others? And if you are aware that you are in touch with your emotions and your feelings, isn't that a huge gift for me who I'm trying to find mine? Yeah. Right. And so we just, our language with each other is so abusive. Our judgment on people is just insane. I'm like, you're judging me. You don't have your shit figured out. Keep your stuff on your side. Don't be throwing it over here. I'm going to have a tough time on my side, just handling my own stuff. And so we don't teach it. Our kids, we blame young people, right? Our kids have never been in a community. They've never been in a community. They go to event after event after event after event that's all isolated and controlled by the parents. And so I do this tons of parenting training, and I'm like, you do realize that there's an after the age of like 12 to 14, you have to stop being the parent and start being the mentor. People are like, what? I've never heard that before. I'm like, guiding them to what they think and what they feel, and help them make decisions and then feel the responsibility and the consequences to those outcomes. You can't be their parent, be the ruler of all, the decision making controller of everything, and then throw them off to college. And they're like, whoa, what happened? Well, you didn't teach them how to make decisions. You didn't teach them life skills. Right. And when I show people how the language changes with your children to go, oh, right. So you go into, a situation where you would have a parent, you're like, okay, go to bed at 10 or 9 or whatever, that in the mentoring role, right. Have you considered what time you need to get up in the morning? How many hours of sleep? Like thinking, guiding through. Right. And so when I tell people, well, my kids don't have a bedtime, they're like, what do you mean your kids don't have a bedtime? Well, because I'm no longer their parent. They have to learn how to parent themselves and get up and go, oh God, I feel horrible. I'm like, oh, really? You feel, what do you think it could be? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, do you think it might have something to do with what time you went to bed? And they're like, well, I don't think so. I'm like, let's see what happens tomorrow. And then they're like, oh, Mom, I have to go to bed earlier. I'm like, really? Why is that? Because you feel like shit in the morning, right? I know the answer. I'm leading them to the answer. Right. So that they learn life skills. Same thing too, when they eat something, I'm like, oh, they're like, I feel sick. I'm like, what could that be? What could that possibly be? I don't know. The gallon of ice cream? Maybe that was too much. What do you think?
It's really interesting because my son's 10 and I'm already feeling that tension where he's battling just at my level of parenting. So I'm conscious not to retire too soon, but there's definitely a, Corey, put your coat on. No. Corey, it's -1 outside. Put your coat on. I don't need my coat. Okay, fine. Like third or fourth time, go figure it out. If you need it, you ain't got it. Tough.
Right. And it's literally adopting the mentorship. And so from a behavioral standpoint, right, he's right at the age where that rebellion really is not rebellion. It's the creation of his own identity outside of you.
Yeah.
You've been telling him who he was. Now he's going, I don't think I want to, which is healthy. Healthy.
Yeah,
it's what he's supposed to be doing, right? Yeah. He's pushing on boundaries to explore who he is and what he stands for. So now you become as a mentor to suggest things that their brain isn't fully there yet, to suggest, wonder what would happen if it started to rain. What would we do? What happens if it gets colder? What if I need a coat? Right? Like just all kinds of questioning for them to start thinking in their curiosity. It's not to give them the answer. It's to teach the skill. How do you seek answers? What happens if we go out there and it does rain? What would you do? Right? For them to go, oh, I could jump into a store and buy an umbrella. I can go into a hotel and borrow one. Oh, what else could you do? Right? Teaching them how to think. That's the role, teaching them how to think and solve problems, not just the way you would solve them. What are all the ways you can solve them without judgment?
Yeah, I love that. And you know, one of the things that you say in your book, I guess the caption is all about success is an inward journey. So I'd love to know about what that inward journey is, but then how does that then transpose onto that scenario we've just been talking about, but with a team? You know, is there a framework? Are we going in to find our values so that we use the values or the purpose, the mission as the framework for those thoughts?
So old. Yeah. No, success being an inward journey, you know, what I have found right through 35 years of work now is that in so many cases, people are trying to live somebody else's life. They're somebody else's definition of success, not their own. And rarely have we spent the time to say, what would it look, sound, and feel like? What evidence would be apparent in my life if it was based on my ideals of success? What is it really? Because what I found as you go through, you know, and do the work, it leads you through to not only creating a life book, but it also creates a perfect day. And I will tell you, like 99.9% of the time when we take people through this, they don't know what their perfect day is. They have no idea, right? Their perfect day is, well, I would get more sleep. Okay, and then what? Right? And so we walk them through an exercise of, you know, when you first wake up, what do you see? What do you feel? What is it like? And what do you hear? And then what? You know, for people to go, well, God, you know, if it was perfect, I would hear water. Okay, great. What else would you hear? Oh, somebody would love me. Okay, what would they say? Right. And then what? Are you sleeping in a cushy bed or not a cushy bed? Is there a comforter or is there not a comforter? Like, are you clothes on or clothes off? Like what then what happens? Well, you know, it'd be great, you know, if I had a, you know, romantic breakfast out on the balcony. Oh, so there's a balcony. Okay, great. What else? Right. And people to really go through what it looks like. And then here's the best part. The best part of it is they've got this perfect day. And then I go, okay, circle how many of those things are present in your life right now.
Yeah.
And then people go, oh my goodness. I'm like, so you're almost living a perfect day. Now, how many of the other things could you intentionally put in your day? You want to wake up to water? You can turn water on anywhere, right? And so people are like, wait a minute, I can actually design my own life. I'm like, yeah, yes, you can. And when you learn, we have something called should and should nots, but then you turn around and go, hey, listen, what's really meaningful to me is if you don't turn the lights on until 7 a.m. because my perfect day, you know, is in a meditative or whatever. And people are like, oh, I can do that. But how would they know?
Yeah.
How would they know if you've not done your work? How can you ask of others of the things you don't know about yourself? And so that's what I mean by the success is an inward journey. Yeah. It's first to discover self. And then once you do, to understand and discover the people around you. I can't tell you how many couples have gone through this who've literally been married 20, 30 years. And they're like, oh my goodness, I had no idea what their perfect, I had no idea their should and should. They had no idea. And then bringing it into a corporate environment where you have a life book on every single person you're responsible for, your whole world changes and it removes guessing.
And exactly. And that's the thing as a servant leader. If you want to be able to serve the needs of your people, you have to understand the needs of your people.
What drives value for them, not you, them.
The reason I started getting excited as you were talking about the perfect day, a guest of mine previously, his name is Joshua Luke Smith. He's a Christian poet, rapper, and on his post is a really lush picture of him cuddling his two little children, and his opening caption is, "The life we long for is hidden in the life we have."
Oh, it's true.
And I read that earlier today, and I was like, that's what came to mind as you were talking. It's like the life we long for is hidden in the life we have. Amelia, what's your perfect day?
You know, it's a good, you know, and it's been something that, you know, every time I go through the exercise, I actually laugh at myself, how simple I am.
Right. Yeah.
Really, you know, people misunderstand me, and that's the work that I'm working on really for this year. Yeah. I am so energized by nature. Mm-hmm. I feel such love and a sense of belonging when I'm in nature, especially if I can get near to like I always say, I'm like, I want to be a tree. I really want to be a tree. And so when I get near, you know, rocks and trees and stuff like that, it really gives me like this inner peace. Yeah. And that feeling that I get when I walk in nature, and I try to do it as often as I can, to do that, that same feeling that I have as it relates to nature, that's what I try to give others, that they feel so comfortable and allow me to earn their trust that we can do amazing things together. And so I truly, truly feel an emotional connection to others to say, whether you like me or hate me, you will learn from me. You will learn from me. And when I went through the exercise to actually write my headstone, which was tough, I had to go through the fact to say, nobody's going to say I was like the most amazing wife or incredible mother or
woman of the decade.
Yeah, whatever. But my headstone basically says she made a difference. Yeah. And so when you really get clear on the end, that's what I do every day. I'm like, did I do the best I can to make a difference today in the people that I met? And that's for everybody from who I meet at Dunkin' Donuts, standing in line, bebopping around. You know, I wave to people. I live in New York, so I wave to people on the freeway, and they're like, "She is crazy." I'm like, "Hi." Just if you're going to come into contact with my energy, I want to make an impact. And that is really what my perfect day is, are these moments of connections that matter. And the more I can have of those in a day, the more that I know I am living my perfect day.
A lot of the insights that you take around designing genius, hiring, retaining, mentoring, you say that they come from in the trenches. Have you got any particular stories of the trenches, some of the real kind of top things that you think are really relevant in today's leadership crisis, shall we say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the big, like, aha, you know, and I think as leaders, we think other people get us and understand us and what drives us. Is when I was growing one of the companies, we needed a major retailer. Like we had little things, but we needed a big boy to believe in what we were doing. And the company that I targeted, that I really believed we were a perfect fit, and they didn't believe that. So that tenacity was like, I was, you know, I stalked the wife at the country club. Yeah, I was like a stalker. And I was so frustrated because I was like, man, they're not even returning my call. Like, just how rude, right? And when I was talking to the EA, they were like, listen, Amelia, he hates you. He's never returning your call. And I got on a plane and I flew across the country. I was so impulsive. I was so angry. And I showed up at the buying office, and I realized, well, you've done it again, Amelia. Here we are. And I don't have an appointment. So like, that little fun fact I forgot. And there was a lady behind the desk, and I was like, hey, I gotta pee. Can you let me in? And she was like, sure, not a problem. And I'm like, okay. So now I'm on the other side. I'm like, whoo, he's on here somewhere. And so, you know, I did. I stalked him in front of the men's restroom, and I finally found him. And he was like, oh my God, you're the most tenacious person I've ever met in my life. But I left there with a purchase order. And the reason why I tell you that is that when I came back, and I was so happy to share this news with my team were like, well, you did it. We knew you would do it. And I was like, well, wait a minute. You don't actually think I humiliated myself for me? Like, for me? No. I was like, I did it because you believe in me. You trust me. It was for you. And I realized that in that moment, I needed to go from being a leader who leads from the front to a leader who leads from the back, because they did not understand why I did what I did and what it takes from me, the little bits of them that live in me, like a little bit of confidence and a little bit of this and a little bit of I'm all little parts of my team that then drives towards an outcome with the fierce belief that I do, right? Because I have a different relationship with risk. And I think that when I look back and I go, okay, well, where do those things come from? I started realizing how misunderstood I was. And then as I got into more companies, I started to realize that that's the biggest problem in leadership, is they don't really understand what's going on in the relationship between leader and teammate. And that the healthy flow state, if you talk Stephen Coulter, right, the flow state within an organization is that everybody leads in their area of genius. Yeah. So if I can't follow as comfortably as I can lead, I'm the problem. And I realized that into so many areas of my company that we could have done so much more. I was the problem. And I was like, wait a minute, but I care so much. And then I was like, oh my God, here's the human dynamic. We care so much. We want to connect. We want to bond. We want to belong. We want to be significant. And in that quest, we create isolation.
Yeah. I also think that I think that's a feeling heart dynamic. I think there's an intellect dynamic, which is when we think that the role entitles us to be the type of leader who is served rather than is serving. And I think that creates a disconnect too.
Because it's when has it been demonstrated, right? Like our parents didn't serve us, that's for sure. The school systems, well, they didn't serve us. Being on a competitive team, that didn't serve. Where were we going to learn that? Right? Until I read The Go-Giver, I had never heard that concept before. Because I was like, wait a minute, but if I give all I am to you, I'm going to be depleted. Like I couldn't I read the book like 100 times. I was like, he can't be right. He can't be right. Because if I'm going to give, there's nothing left for me, because I had a unhealthy relationship with giving. I believed I gave to get something in return. That's what I was taught. I'm going to give. And what are you going to give? I'm like, I wanted to know up front, before I do anything, what are you going to do for me? And so it was so unhealthy. And so this giving freely without wanting anything in return, I was like, that's insanity. Who would do that? Yeah. And so I think that's what's taken so long, because as much as we read it, we go, well, I don't know how to implement that. How do I implement that? I'm like, I don't want to go first.
This is where
you give, and then I'll give next. You go, you do it. Yeah. I'm like, we have a lot of problems around giving.
This is where the inward journey comes in, though. I talk about it's about getting to a state where it's your heart set is, I have all that I need. I think it's Psalm 23. It says, the Lord is my shepherd and I have all that I need. And I think I try and get to that state and that spirit every single day. And I think that's what helps me be a go-giver. I guess one example, listeners of the podcast will have heard me share this a couple of weeks ago, but we ordered Domino's pizza a couple of months ago. And my daughter, she's 7, she was starving and she had her pizza. And I said, oh, Brooke, can I have a piece? And she was like over it, like swatting my hand away type thing. There was no way, she was starving. There's not a chance, Dad. But she eats pretty much all of it, leaves one piece and says, oh, here you go, Dad. It's the same thing, right? It was one piece. The outcome was the same. Dad got one piece. But the spirit of her giving freely wasn't possible because she didn't have all that she needed. Her basic needs were not met in the first instance. As soon as she had given to herself and she had all that she needed, she gave lovingly, she gave freely, same thing, same resource, one piece, but the way with which she was able to give was without needing anything in return. And I think that's the thing for leaders. We all need to try and get to that. I'm not saying go and eat like 3/4 of a pizza before we go to work, but we have to try and get to that spirit of, I'm all right, I've got all that I need. And in this uncertainty and in this unsafety, I'm able to put you before me.
And I think that it sounds easy, and it's
Right.
not. It's not, because we are undeveloped in our relationship with trust. Trust is earned repeatedly, not one time, right? That's some craziness that we learned in school. I earn your trust and therefore I have my trust. No, I earn trust repeatedly from you over and over again. But in our relationship, if it's going to be a healthy adult relationship, then we have to have dialogue about, what do you need to see, hear, and feel from me in order for me to earn your trust? My responsibility is to earn it. And the way that you help me is by guiding me on how I earn it. So you may say to me, you know what earns trust from you? Punctual. Do what you say what you're going to do. Be okay with me when I'm not okay. Like whatever those things are that drive value for you, so that I understand that this is how I earn your trust. So that when I step off, I understand that the responsibility is on me, not you. It's on me. And the same in return is to be able to say, this is how you earn trust from me. And we do a check and balance. And what happens is, when leaders understand what earns trust from their teammate, they're shocked. They're shocked, because they're like, well, I thought it was these things. I'm like, no, it's never what you think. Never what you think.
You remembered my kid's birthday. You remembered my kid's birthday, or you asked how my weekend was, or
you want to hear something that's sad during COVID. During COVID, I think it's what was more than 60% of employees said that their bosses never even checked on them. They never even called.
What are they even doing? What are they doing?
But I'm saying they didn't. And so we have so many people who lost people, houses, bank accounts, huge things that were lost, that they're grieving over, that has never been addressed. Like even now, I go into companies, I'm like, tell me what you lost during COVID. People go, oh my God, that was the most meaningful conversation. I had no idea any of that happened. I'm like, because you didn't ask. You didn't ask. We have people who've lost children, family members, husbands, wives, and they go on about their day and nobody knows. And then you wonder why they're a disgruntled worker, because you're not even paying attention. You're not even paying attention. Because we go, well, they look okay. And I say this all the time. So my children's father committed suicide in May of this last year. Devastating. But people go, but you look like you're okay. I'm like, did you hear what you just said? My kids lost their father. There's nothing okay about me. There's nothing okay about me. I lost somebody who was in my life for 26 years. I'm not going to get over that anytime soon. Maybe never. Because the void, right? They say never underestimate, right, the void that your life will make in others, because we can't even quantify it. But because we show up capable, we just assume people are okay. But how is capable and okay the same thing? Capable, I'm capable. Am I okay? No, I'm grieving. And I'm not grieving just because of me. I'm grieving because I'm watching my children grieve. I can get over my own grieving. Watching your children suffer, oh, well, that's something else. That's something else. And that's what's happening inside our companies. We don't even know what's going on with our colleagues that we work shoulder to shoulder with. And supposedly we're supposed to care. And we don't.
How do we make space for more heart?
Oh, I think that the only way we make space for other people's hearts is if we give us permission for us to be able to show ours to be seen. I think that until you can see my heart, I'll never be able to see yours. And I think that that's why the journey is so difficult. And as a leader, it's something that I've been fighting for years. I was not going to show you my weakness. And then I realized, oh, it's actually my greatest beauty.
Your fullest expression.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's, we were taught to be tough. We were taught, business is all about numbers, and it's about money, and it's about the whatever, and, be a machine, and, knock down and get up. And look where that's brought us. Yeah. That guerrilla type primal leadership, the loneliest society in the world. We have less retention than we've ever had in our life. So maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't work. And that's, I think, the questions. Those are the questions that you're asking. And I think those are the questions that a lot of us are asking. We're now saying, you know what, we're going to try it a different way. I'm not saying I'm right, but I know I'm going to try it differently.
Yeah. Do you remember the film Madagascar?
Oh, yeah.
I call it the Penguins of Madagascar moment. When we get to the top, we get to the pinnacle, and we look around and we go, oh, this sucks.
Yeah.
I think that's the wonderful thing about success externally validated, is that it doesn't fit us anymore. We look around the lives that we lead, the relationships we've got, the workplace we've got, the bank account, the holidays, the cars. If it's not peace on the inside, then it doesn't matter what's there on the outside. And so often,
and that was one of my greatest lessons. I got to what the top was, and I looked around and I go, whose life is this?
And the expectation of I should feel something.
Until I realized that I built somebody else's ideal life. I never built mine.
Yeah, and I think it's as simple, right? I've got a little circle over there, and like the simplest way I describe this feeling is if there's a line going out and a line going in. And I think when we build lives that are based on other people's success, everything of this world becomes the definition of us. And those definitions become entrapment. And I think the opposite is, like you said, find the inward journey, which is about come to the world as an expression of who I was made to be, who I believe I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's from that place of being, do I then come and have my doing aligned with who I am, what I really care about, what I stand for, what I'm passionate about, what I'm willing to serve and sacrifice for. And then I'll have whatever was meant for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things that when I did my life book, which became such a like a chuckle point for me, is that grand gestures have nothing on me. Nothing. There's not. I don't even have a reaction. Nothing. Yeah. I have nothing.
Yeah.
It's the simplest things that touches my heart so deeply, so deeply, is the little details. And I really, really found that out about myself, is the small details are the things that make me the most giddy and the most real and show up in my most authentic self. Yeah. And I didn't know that about myself. I really thought that I needed grand gestures, and that's why I wasn't emotionally reacting to things that were going on. And then I realized, I don't need to go bigger. I actually need to go smaller.
So if you're going via Dunkin' Donuts and you're on Amelia's team, make sure you bring her back one.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think that's, I think that's the beauty of this whole thing, is that life can be so much richer and so much more connection and meaningful in really small acts of kindness. It's the small acts of kindness that unite us. And that's where the meaning of life is. And the only people stopping us from living that heart is we're in our own way. We're in our own way. I literally just say to people all the time, people are like, I don't know how to start. I'm like, okay, for the rest of the day, as you bump into people, smile and say hello. They're like, what? I just smile and say hello. They're like, we're in New York. And I'm like, no, just smile and say hello. Use somebody's name. I'm like, hey, how are you? And whatever. And people are like, do I know you? I'm like, no, but you have a name tag on. So that's how I know your name. You're right. Yeah, I mean, if we just lean in with acts of kindness, you will be blown away on how your life changes.
I'm reading Power versus Force by David Hawkins at the moment. And in it, he talks as a correlation between consciousness and our ability to hold eye contact. And if we increase our ability to hold eye contact, we will scale from shame, guilt, anger. We'll go through courage and vibrations. Love. Exactly. And we'll get to this higher elevated state where greater outcomes become possible because of who we're being in and through. And I think that's kind of what it means to leave a heartprint. This is one of the words here at Always Better Than Yesterday. It's about having that ripple effect, that in our interactions, I'm leaving you better in some way because of that vibration. And I guess, you and I could talk all day long. There's so much stuff that I probably left unasked, but I'd just love to know, with all the work that you've done, your heart work, what do you believe your Heartprint? What will be the legacy of the work that you have put out into the world?
I really think that when everything's said and done, that people will just sit back and say, she made a difference. She made a difference in somebody's life, or how they thought, or how they felt, or something that they tried. I literally just think it's a small little shift of making a difference. And it's nothing more than that. That for me, I think, is my greatest heart connection with others, is that I really don't care if you know who I am. I care if you know my work. And if you know my work, I promise you, it'll make a difference.
I love that. There's a phrase that I heard a couple of years ago. I think it was in Erwin McManus's book. He says that what we do for ourselves will be forgotten, but what we do for others will be remembered forever.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really powerful. Really, really powerful. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with us.
Thank you so much.
Like I said, we could talk all day. There's probably loads of things that you probably wanted to say. Loads of things I wanted to ask. But hey, we have to leave it for another conversation.
No worries. My honor, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited. And I'll be back.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll be honored and privileged if you'd leave us a final thought from your good self.
I think my final thought is, don't get married to your position. Be open to realize that what you think is happening is never what's really happening, and leave life with curiosity. Just lead with curiosity, and you'll be surprised what comes back.
Amilya, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for making it to the end of the interview here on YouTube. I hope that our time spent together has left you a little bit better than before you push play. Before you go anywhere, please leave a comment down below, some of your key reflections, your key takeaways. I love hearing from you and what this conversation has inspired in you. Let me know what you're going to do as a result of this conversation. I will be back next Wednesday, where I will share another inspiring guest. To make sure that you don't miss that, please do subscribe, hit the bell, and you will be notified as soon as it goes live. If you're curious to know how I, through Always Better Than Yesterday, can serve you, your team, your organization, please do visit alwaysbetterthanyesterday.com, and it will be my honor and privilege to help you in any way I can. Keep leading, my friends. I've been Ryan Hartley, host of the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast here on YouTube. Always love.